The stage lights glowed a little brighter than usual that night. The Late Show had been promoting Carrie Underwood's appearance all week, billing it as a light-hearted sit-down with one of country music's most iconic voices. The crowd inside the Ed Sullivan Theater was buzzing, ready to see Carrie share a few laughs, maybe sing a verse or two, and talk about her latest project. But nobody in that room, not the audience, not the staff, not even Carrie herself, could have predicted how quickly the tone would change. Stephen Colbert greeted her with his trademark smile as she walked onto the stage in a sleek, dark green dress that caught the light just enough to sparkle without calling attention to itself. She looked calm, gracious, and composed. As always, "Ladies and gentlemen," Colbert said with his usual charm, "the voice of a generation, and the reason I once bought a cowboy hat I never wore, Carrie Underwood." Carrie smiled, waved to the audience, and took her seat. The first few minutes of the interview followed the expected script. Colbert asked about her upcoming tour. Carrie spoke about the joy of returning to live performances after time away from the road. She talked about her family, the challenges of balancing motherhood with music, and the inspiration behind her latest album, which focused on perseverance, grace, and faith. Colbert nodded along, seemingly engaged. But when the subject turned to the album's spiritual undertones, a subtle shift occurred. "So, Carrie," Colbert said, flipping to a new card in his hand, "this album has a lot of references to faith, prayer, even judgment. Do you worry that might alienate some fans?" Carrie didn't hesitate. "Not really," she said softly. "I think we all have something we turn to when life gets hard. For me, that's always been my faith. It's not about pushing it on anyone. It's just who I am." Colbert's smile tightened. Sure, he said. "But some of the lyrics do get pretty pointed. One critic even said it sounded like a warning disguised as a ballad." Carrie didn't blink. "It's a warning to myself, too," she replied. "We all wrestle with doubt and fear and failure. I write about what I know. I'm not perfect. I'm not preaching. I'm just trying to be honest." The audience clapped, though a little hesitantly. The tension wasn't yet obvious, but it had entered the room. Colbert pressed forward. "You wore a cross on your album cover. That caused quite a stir online. Did you anticipate that reaction?" Carrie's voice remained steady. "I wear that cross every day. It's not a statement. It's a part of me. I didn't wear it to provoke. I wore it because I always do." Colbert chuckled. "Right, but everything's political now, Carrie. Even a necklace." Her smile faded just a touch. "Then maybe the problem isn't the necklace." That was the moment the mood shifted entirely. Colbert leaned forward, abandoning his cue cards. "Look, I respect your beliefs," he said. "But don't you think it's dangerous to lean into that kind of symbolism right now? With everything going on in this country, religious divides, cultural polarization, isn't there some responsibility to dial it down?" Carrie looked at him for a long second. Her expression didn't harden. It didn't soften. It simply clarified. "I think if we're asking people to hide who they are to make others comfortable, then maybe we're asking the wrong question," she said. "And maybe comfort isn't the goal. Maybe connection is." There was no applause, just silence. Colbert didn't back down. "But what about those who feel excluded by faith-based language? Who see it as code for something else?" Carrie kept her voice quiet. "I can't be responsible for what people project onto my words. I can only be responsible for speaking them truthfully." The band had stopped playing its usual soft background cues. The control room stayed quiet. Every person in that room could feel the tension now. Not theatrical, not combative, but deeply human. Colbert tried to lighten the moment. "Okay, so no plans to release a gospel rap fusion album anytime soon?" Carrie offered a small smile. "Probably not. But I won't apologize for writing songs that mean something to me." The audience applauded, this time more confidently. Colbert glanced at his producer offstage. The producer looked uneasy. Then came the line that changed everything. "Let's get real," Colbert said. "Isn't there a part of you that uses faith as a brand? I mean, the wholesome image, the humble roots, the Bible verses. It sells. Especially in country music." The studio went still. Carrie's smile vanished completely. She took a slow breath, then looked directly at Colbert. "You invited me here to talk about the music," she said. "But it feels like you had something else in mind." Colbert tried to speak, but she continued. If you think faith is a marketing strategy, then maybe you've never actually needed it. Maybe you've never stood on a stage and hoped the words you were about to sing would hold you together. Maybe you've never had a night where prayer was the only thing that kept you from falling apart. If you don't understand that, I won't try to convince you, but I won't let you call it a brand. The audience was frozen. Colbert blinked. His voice, when it returned, was noticeably thinner. All right, he said, trying to laugh. Let's take a break. We'll be right back with Carrie Underwood. But the break never came. Carrie stood up slowly, unclipped her mic, and placed it on the seat. I think we're done here, she said. Then she walked off stage, not in anger, not in protest, but with the same quiet grace she had brought into the room. And behind her, the theater was silent. Carrie Underwood didn't raise her voice. She didn't plead her case. She didn't need to. The moment she stepped off the stage, the audience remained seated, unsure whether they had just witnessed a walk-off or something more deliberate. The studio's applause sign flashed above them, but no one moved. The usual cues of television had stopped working. Stephen Colbert sat frozen in his chair. His expression was unreadable, not angry, not embarrassed, but as if something had just gone terribly off script. His producer moved toward him, gesturing behind the scenes for someone to roll the commercial, but the cameras stayed live a few seconds too long. Those seconds were enough. People online captured the silence, the absence. The way Carrie's empty chair said more than any headline could. And by the time the official Late Show YouTube channel posted the heavily edited version of the interview, it was already too late. The full, uncut footage had spread across every corner of the internet. Clips of Carrie speaking with quiet strength about identity, about faith, about not branding belief for approval, were being shared faster than the network could respond. Fans who had followed her music since American Idol posted about why this moment mattered. People who didn't even follow country music said they saw something different in her, not a celebrity moment, but a human one. And behind closed doors, network executives scrambled. The next morning, headlines ran with the words walkout, controversy, and meltdown, but none of them seemed to capture what viewers had actually seen. There was no meltdown, no spectacle, just a woman refusing to be framed into someone else's narrative. Carrie's team remained completely silent. They didn't issue a statement. They didn't post a clarifying tweet. They let the moment speak for itself. But those closest to the situation later confirmed what many suspected. The interview had been pitched to Carrie as a conversation about her music and creative process. There had been no mention of challenging her values or turning her convictions into a late-night punchline. She agreed to the interview in good faith, said one insider. But what she walked into wasn't what was agreed to. It felt like they wanted a confrontation more than a conversation. In the days that followed, support poured in from unexpected places. Other artists quietly reached out, thanking Carrie for saying things they had long felt but were too afraid to articulate. She said it better than any of us could, one female artist posted anonymously. That we don't wear who we are for attention. We wear it because it's real, and because sometimes it's the only thing holding us together. Stephen Colbert returned to air the next night with no mention of what had happened. The segment featuring Carrie had been reduced to a few lighthearted questions and one music clip, giving the appearance of a standard interview. But viewers noticed the splice, the missing exchange, the uncomfortable cut between moments. It was a performance of normalcy, and it only made things worse. Social media lit up with calls for accountability. Some defended Colbert's questions, saying public figures should be challenged. But others asked whether challenge had crossed into provocation, whether television had lost the ability to host difficult conversations with dignity. One post that gained traction read simply, "She didn't walk off. She walked away from being used." Carrie, for her part, remained steady. She didn't respond to critics. She didn't double down. She simply showed up at a scheduled performance the following weekend and sang with the same focus, warmth, and depth that had always defined her. But something had changed. Fans in the audience held signs that read, "Truth matters, and you don't need to apologize." They cheered louder, not just for the music, but for the person behind it. And in those cheers was something television could not edit. Carrie later appeared on a different platform, one known for long-form, in-depth conversations. She wasn't asked to explain what had happened. The host asked only about her writing process, her view of resilience, and what it meant to stay grounded when the spotlight felt unsteady. She answered thoughtfully, "I think people assume that standing up for something always looks loud," she said. "But sometimes it's just not backing down when you're being told to shrink." The comment wasn't direct, but it didn't need to be. It echoed with everyone who had seen the clip, everyone who had sat in a crowd and wondered when performance had become more important than personhood. Behind the scenes, Colbert's team faced a wave of internal criticism. Staff members had raised concerns about the tone of the interview beforehand. Several producers reportedly warned that ambushing guests, especially with topics never agreed upon, would backfire. But the show had been chasing a more viral edge, and those warnings went ignored. Now, with backlash mounting and trust inside the studio shaken, those same producers began speaking to media outlets, carefully, anonymously, but with growing clarity. She wasn't dramatic. She wasn't emotional. She was just honest, said one crew member. And that was more powerful than any scripted moment we've ever had. The incident sparked a wider industry conversation about respect in media, about the ethics of pushing personal narratives into entertainment spaces, about the thin line between challenge and disrespect, and about what it meant when a guest decided that line had been crossed and quietly stood up. Carrie didn't change the way she dressed. She didn't tone down her language. She didn't recalibrate her message. If anything, she became more certain of what mattered to her and more committed to creating music that reflected it. By the end of the month, her album had risen to the top of the charts again, not because of the controversy, but because people had gone back to listen, really listen, to the lyrics. They heard what she had tried to say all along. That conviction doesn't have to shout to be heard. That faith doesn't need permission to be visible. And that dignity, when tested, often speaks loudest in silence.